Hey Jerry, how's it going?
Okay.
I'm Evan. I don't know if we think we've met.
Uh, I don't think so, but that's okay. I guess we're not, we're waiting.
Yes, I am helping Mike out and running the Zoom today. So
Okay.
that's my
Um, I'm going to mute my mic and turn my camera off for a while.
sounds
Just
good.
want to make sure everything was working. So,
Great.
see you soon.
Recording in progress.
New Yorkers share their personal story about the vaccine. My people, my lab people, I am telling you, the one in any people in there, I know the misconceptions are there, but I'm telling you, there is really ain't nothing to be afraid of. That.
Sorry, Karen, I put it in the chat, but just this is indeed the CB6, Brooklyn CB6 Transportation Committee meeting. We'll be getting started in just a few minutes. Wait for a couple more people to log in. But thank you all for joining us.
Hey, everybody. See, it looks like all CB6 and DOT people so far, so. And apologies, I'm finishing my dinner, so I'm gonna just keep eating.
Good evening, everybody. How everybody doing?
Good, Joanne, how are you?
I'm doing pretty good, thank you.
That's good.
Good evening, Joanne. How you doing?
I'm doing good. Good to see everybody.
Good. Nice to see you.
Evan, thanks for running the tech part of this meeting.
Okay.
Danielle, how are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Good, thanks.
Nice to be back at CB6.
Yeah,
Nice to see you, Jerry. It's been a long time.
Yes, it has, but it's nice to see you. And I was going to say hello. I was going to say good evening to Keith. There he is. Good evening, Keith. Okay, I guess he didn't hear me. Good evening, Keith.
Evening, how are you doing?
Okay, how are you?
Good, Jerry.
Okay,
Good.
good.
Jamie, nice to meet you. I saw you present when Hank did his thing a few weeks ago. So didn't get a chance to say hello then because it was a big crowd, but thanks for joining us tonight.
No problem.
Give it a couple more minutes for more people to join. We're short of a quorum at this point. Dan, how are you?
Hey, good. How are you?
Good, thanks.
Hello.
The islands look nice, Madeline.
Looks better than Brooklyn, if only.
Good evening, everyone. We're just waiting a couple more minutes so more people can join. Okay, I think we're going to go ahead and get started. Thanks everyone for joining this evening. My name is Eric McClure. I am the co-chair of the Community Board 6 Transportation Committee. Jerry Armour, who chairs the Public Safety Committee. We're a joint committee, Transportation Public Safety. Jerry's here as well. Tonight's agenda is a presentation by the Department of Transportation on the plans, both already implemented and future plans for the Brooklyn Queens Expressway, especially the triple cantilever portion that runs through Brooklyn Heights. This is an informational presentation. There won't be a vote from the community board on this. It's purely for the public's information. We thank the department for being here. We will be open to questions from everyone. I will, if you would use the raise hand function, which you can find down at the bottom of your screen, I will recognize you and call on you at the appropriate time. We'll take questions from the community board's transportation committee members first, and then be more than happy if you are a member of the public to have you ask your question or comment. So without any further ado, I will note, and I think everybody saw this when they joined the meeting, that the meeting is being recorded. So I will turn it over. Keith, are you going to kick things off on your end, or?
I think Jimmy is going to kick them off.
Okay, and I'm going to invite Jimmy Kim from the Department of Transportation. I forget your title, but it's senior advisor or something like that, but I'll let you introduce yourself. And thank you very much to you and the whole DOT team for being here.
Thanks, Eric. Thank you for having me and the whole team. And just so you know who's going to be speaking, we have Paul Schwartz, our Deputy Commissioner for Bridges, and we have Daniel Shack from Sam Schwartz Engineering, our traffic consultants, who will be jumping in during this presentation. And just, and I will go ahead and share my screen. Just make sure. Oh, you've disabled screen sharing. Would you allow me to share my screen?
You should be able to try now. Sorry about that.
Okay. Oh, no worries. Okay, I think I got it. Okay. So here we go. And so I think what we wanted to do, let me just get this to be, well, I think this is fine. Oops. So I think for many of you, you know, our DOT's plan for the Bqe, particularly for the triple cantilever section, was announced back in the middle of August. Seems like a lifetime ago. The mayor and Commissioner Gutman announced a plan to, and I'll just go launch right into it, to critically extend the life and really make sure that the structure, the triple cantilever structure, was safe, you know, beyond the near term. So we are going to tell you a little bit about those plans for some of you who have not been following. We have Paul Schwartz, who will give you an update on our near-term repairs. As with any structure, we are always going to be out there to make sure that we are doing the utmost to keep the cantilever in good repair. We'll talk about the long-term community vision. And really, I think now that the 2-lane has been installed, my goodness, for a month now, we are really here to, you know, field questions and comments on some of the traffic conditions you're seeing in your neighborhood and in sort of downtown Brooklyn. And so that is our agenda. And just as a little bit of a fun fact, I actually started working on the Bqe about 13, 14 years ago, back when the state was going through the state had ownership over the structure. We were going through a EIS and public involvement process. So this is a project that's near and dear to me. Launching right into the presentation, I will talk a little bit about the announcement that was made and really using kind of the most basic layperson terms. We, with the advice and input of a number of bridge engineering experts from around the country, identified a set of solutions to keep the structure in good working order for at least 20 years. And how are we doing that? We're really focusing on the joints. There's about 140 plus joints on the roadway surface. We need to make sure that those joints and the steel in those joints are not corroding. And so we do that by eliminating any salt for future de-icing operations. We are focused on waterproofing those joints, making sure we improve drainage, especially with everyone's recent experiences with Ida. This is extremely important. And so that is a simple solution, but it's actually much complex when you get into it. But that is, those set of actions are going to address the issue of slow down corrosion. And we are on track to do the first set of installations next summer. And the full cantilever installation will take place from 2023 to 2026. And Paul's on deck to answer any technical questions about that. As you know, we've placed state-of-the-art sensors on the Bqe. We are still reviewing the results of these sensors and really sort of tweaking the instrumentation. And what these sensors will do is provide real-time information on how the structure is behaving, so we can respond and right away if something does not look right. So the 2-lane conversion was something that it was an action that the expert panel and in fact the city council had recommended last year. And the goal of the 2-lane is also to ensure the structural life of the cantilever combined with the slowdown in corrosion. We are able to also provide safety benefits, as Dan will talk about shortly. It's really going to reduce the wear and tear. As some of you may know, the cantilever was really not built to support such a large volume of overweight trucks. So what some of the past studies showed was, or the past studies revealed, was that, if we didn't take action, in about 5 years, we would have had to actually remove all trucks from the highway. And I think that would have had much more substantial disruptions. So Dan's gonna dive into this section before we move on.
Thanks, Jimmy. So I'll speak about the traffic and monitoring. So as Jimmy was saying, that really reducing the load on the structure is what drove these changes, but we wanted to take the opportunity to address other issues on the Bqe, particularly some longstanding issues with safety. Just looking back at 2019, the last kind of normal year, there were 300 crashes on this stretch of the BQE that's from about the Brooklyn Bridge to Hamilton Avenue. They were occurring pretty regularly, on average 9 times a week. Aside from the safety aspects of that, they also had a great impact on traffic. Almost all of them closed at least one lane on the highway, would take about an hour to clear. So all of this led to a lot of unpredictability on the BQE and the travel times there, and unexpected congestion. So we wanted to address some of these things with the project. It was a great opportunity. If you could jump to the next slide, Jimmy. Oh, I forgot about the animation. Just I think one more click.
It's stalling on me.
Maybe one more.
I know, it's stalling.
Well, we'll see when it loads. It'll be a zoom in.
Okay, there we go.
A particular concern, we were looking at the crashes before, were the Atlantic Avenue on ramps. This is in both directions. They were previously both stop controlled with really no acceleration lane at all. Vehicles had to just kind of try to find a gap and jump in. The Staten Island bound one off of Columbia Street in particular had pretty poor visibility. So these, on the previous slide, you could see they were pretty much like hotspots along the corridor for crashes. So the project was a chance to address this. If you go to the next slide. So and this is what's in now. On the right, what was previously there on the left, the BQE had 3 lanes, as you know, 3 substandard lanes, about 10.5 feet. So with the changes, with the reduction of 1 lane, at least 1 lane for moving traffic, we were able to provide a shoulder on both sides and both directions of the highway. And then that also allows for the addition of lanes. If you go, sorry, it's not on the next slide. But that also allowed for us to create standard merge lanes for those 2 entrances at Atlantic Avenue. And if anyone's driven them recently since the changes there, it should be much smoother and much easier for vehicles to go into the main line and for vehicles on the main line to mix with them. If you go on the next slide, Jimmy. So, kind of going through the changes, we know removing a lane of traffic from a major highway in both directions certainly would have impact. So we took some steps to attempt to minimize those. One big factor was maximizing the use of the Hugh Carey Tunnel. So I think it's roughly 1/3 of the vehicles before coming north on the BQE on the triple cantilever were headed towards the Brooklyn Bridge. We had known in the past when there was heavy congestion here, there was a natural kind of shift to the Hugh Carey Tunnel from the Brooklyn Bridge. We wanted to make sure that kind of trend continued and was encouraged to reduce the volume on the stretch of the highway. There are also various measures to reduce the effects of trucks. We'll go over in a minute. And then certain measures to help protect the community and the local neighborhood streets. If you go to the next slide. So I was talking about the Hugh Carey Tunnel a second ago. It's really at pretty much all times a faster route towards Manhattan. And sometimes it's a few minutes. When the BQE is congested, which is often, it can be over 20 minutes faster to get to Manhattan. It's even typically faster to take the tunnel and get to the FDR Drive right on the Manhattan side of the Brooklyn Bridge, as opposed to going up the BQE towards the bridge. So we wanted to make sure drivers were aware of this, and we've implemented this into our messaging plans that are on the VMS boards and various public messaging to try to encourage that. Jumping ahead to trucking, we also wanted to make sure that trucks were either staying on the BQE, or if not permitted, were not on it. but that those that are on the streets were well aware of and would know what truck routes were available for them and what to stay on. So there already was a pretty robust truck wayfinding plan rolled out along the truck routes like Hick Street and Atlantic Avenue. We supplemented that on some of the other ones that we wanted to make sure vehicles are aware of, like 3rd and 4th Avenues and Flushing Avenues. There's also a bill to help keep the overweight vehicles off of the BQE. I think it's the next slide. Yeah. So this is a state action. There's a bill that's passed in the state Senate and the state House that is currently pending governor approval. So I think, I don't know, Jim, if you want to say something about getting the public support out.
Yeah, I mean, this is, I think we are feeling good that Governor Hochul will sign this piece of legislation. But, if there's any way you could send your message to Albany, this is really a key way to enforce overweight trucks. We've had police blitzes, but obviously it would take an enormous amount of police effort just to identify which trucks are overweight and pull them over and ticket them. So this will really crack down on overweight trucks.
Thanks, Jimmy. And as I was saying, speaking about the tunnel and not just that, there's been a pretty large messaging effort here since the project went in a few weeks before, actually, to make sure the public was aware of it as much as possible. All the VMS in the region were used to alert drivers before it went in, and since it's gone in, to avoid this section of the BQE if possible, take transit or find an alternate route. You go to the next.
Yeah, and I just want to interrupt here. This is all, all of this is dynamic. Traffic is dynamic. It's
Right.
constantly changing. In fact, we had a meeting with our counterparts at the state to talk about making the VMS signage more effective. And that's what we're going to, work on in the coming days and weeks. For example, warning drivers on the New Jersey side about delays. And encouraging them to take the New Jersey Turnpike. And so, all of this is a work in progress.
Definitely.
Do you want me to talk about this? Yeah. So
Sure.
I think when we launched the 2-lane or the weeks before we implemented the 2-lane, we used our social media, our press contacts, bought radio spots to advise or to warn drivers to stay off the roads. I think now, I think, again, we are thinking through the most effective means of communication. I think there's probably a bigger regional issue with just people still holding on to their cars and insisting on driving. So we're hearing from all of our regional agency partners that all of their crossings are starting to max out. So I think, again, this is what we did in the summer leading up to the 2-lane, and we need to revisit what sort of effective messaging might help the overall network.
And then that was the plan, and since everything went in on August 30th, we meaning all of the DOT and the consultant team have been really actively monitoring and managing traffic since then to make sure things are working well and it's still going on. So we've all been working pretty closely with the Joint Traffic Management Center in Queens, which is sort of the central hub for all the agencies, city and state, that are involved in traffic. That's it always is, and right now is particularly monitoring the BQE and travel times to respond to incidents, make sure police or tow trucks are alerted right away if something goes wrong. We're also studying regularly the congestion levels on the BQE, but specifically on all the local streets in the area. We've had teams of staff out pretty much every day since August 30th, watching and monitoring to see what happens with the local intersections and local streets to see if there's excessive queuing or detours from the BQE. In particular, watching if there is non-compliance by trucks onto the truck routes and driving down and detouring down local streets. We've also been working closely since the start with NYPD for TEA deployment. They've been out since the first day at these kind of general areas in purple on this map. On the left were kind of the coverage, but they've been shifting around regularly to respond to actual needs. And finally, we're tracking quite a bit of data on the highway and watching for trends and looking what happens long term. If you go to the next slide. So just some initial findings, and it's, we're about 4 weeks in now, so it's early to draw conclusions. We're kind of at the point we always want things to sort of settle and normalize over the first few weeks as people get used to the new patterns before we draw any concrete conclusions. We can say, for sure that the BQE itself has had a large increase in travel time going north towards the two-lane section Atlantic Avenue and coming south towards the two-lane section by the Brooklyn Bridge. There is congestion at places where there's always been congestion that's definitely been exacerbated since the plan went in. So places like Old Fulton Street, Atlantic near Hicks and Hamilton near Hicks, where there are entry points to the BQE and the queuing has increased. We also have seen and heard some complaints from people in the community about increased traffic on all the northbound streets in the area. There has been some increase in travel times on those streets. It's measurable. It's again early days, but what we've been looking at so far has mostly shown these streets going back to 2019 conditions. So certainly slower than they were over the summer, but more or less in line with some exceptions with how they were operating back in fall of 2019.
Dan,
again, we continue to monitor everything as we go, making sure we're looking at all the nuance. All right, go ahead.
And Dan, just to set some context and jumping off what I said earlier, when we look at the vehicle mileage and usage data, we are seeing that for the city and region, that vehicle volumes have been climbing back to pre-pandemic conditions. So that's also sort of an explanation to kind of indicate that overall traffic is pretty chunky everywhere.
It is. Things are certainly swinging back. And then, as I was saying, we're monitoring a lot. And what are we doing with it? We've been, the TEA posts have been regularly adjusted since implementation to respond to local conditions. That'll keep on going. They get shifted around to where they're needed. I think it's been like 4 times have been shifted so far. There's been a couple of changes already put in place. The Staten Island bound southbound entrance off of Vine Street, off of Old Fulton Street, has been restriped at the end of last week to make the merge go a little bit more smoothly. Various intersection signal timings have been adjusted in the area already. There's been some additional signage put on the Brooklyn Bridge for vehicles coming from Manhattan, so they know about an alternate way to get onto the BQE via Sand Street. And then, as I said, we're continuing to monitor. There are various other signal timing changes and phasing changes, as well as striping adjustments that are all being analyzed now. We're kind of watching the data and looking at what would make the most sense. And these updates will continue.
And we will definitely have a section to talk about the the local issues that I see
Yeah.
popping up in the chat. So hold on for just a second. Paul, do you want to jump in and just give everyone sort of a heads up on our near-term repairs?
Absolutely. Good evening, everyone. So in addition to the preservation that Jimmy spoke about before, we're also doing some near-term repairs. One which you may have seen if you are in the area are the wall repairs over at Hicks Street. This is off that Cadman Plaza exit ramp off the eastbound and Queensbound Bqe, where we are coming up to the end of our repair of the retaining wall there. So we do expect to complete this in the fall, probably about a month or so from now. Next year, we will be getting into some span repairs of the Queensbound roadway. There's 2 locations, spans 4 and 34. That will require some full weekend closures and some partial closures of the highway during the week to prep for those. And that is, as I said, planned for calendar year 22. At the same time, there's some structural conditions at Geralman Street and at Clark Street. These are conditions that are inside the structure, so they won't be as noticeable to the public, but they are flags that we need to repair to make sure that the Bqe can function as it's supposed to. Of course, whenever we take on this work, we always follow the proper regulations here, and so we will be in compliance with any of the environmental review laws which would pertain to the work that we're doing.
Thanks, Paul. And so the last section is the Bqe visioning exercise. We have a consultant in place, WSP, who has developed a scope and a schedule that we have signed on to. We are just getting to the nitty-gritty of finalizing the contracting. But in the meantime, I'll just give you all a sort of snapshot of what the visioning process will entail. It's going to be approximately an 18-month to 2-year exercise to look at the entire highway, not just the triple cantilever section. It is a big look, a macro look at, reimagining this highway. So it's no longer a truck highway. That's the macro look. But I think the other important piece is that our consultant is going to engage stakeholders from the entire corridor, from Queens all the way down to Staten Island. Obviously, different sections of the highway have different characteristics. We acknowledge and recognize that there have been lots of plans and conversations and meetings held, particularly around certain portions of the corridor and certain neighborhoods. So, we've heard the concerns. We're not trying to reinvent the wheel. We know there's a bit of planning fatigue, but our goal of this exercise is that there is a cohesive vision plan that can be adopted by the next mayoral administration, but also more importantly, be executed by potentially a new entity, which is a proposal put forward by Senator Kavanaugh and Assemblymember Simon. This would be sort of in the spirit of a Brooklyn Bridge Park Development Corporation, an entity that can cross jurisdictions, that has the ability to take on the project, to go through the regulatory hurdles, to go through the funding and financing, and actually get the vision realized, and with the most sort of pressing need to get something done on the triple cantilever, especially as we're working around a 20-year deadline, which if you think about all of the things that have to happen, is actually not a long time. So we are excited to get this started, and fingers crossed, all our contracting paperwork gets settled in next week, and we can start to have a kickoff and begin to bring you all into the process. So that is the broad plan. So I think really, we wanted to open this up to a conversation with all of you. We know that we've heard from you, and we know traffic is a concern. We are going to provide monthly traffic updates. We do review the data, looking at delays, looking at crash data, looking at local traffic conditions. So we commit to providing those sort of flyers on a monthly basis. We're going to launch quarterly meetings to discuss, the overall BQE framework. Our construction related meetings will occur as our construction plans advance. I'll leave this email and website up here. Again, we keep tabs on your comments and concerns. And actually we, we go out and, in fact, Dan drove the neighborhood on Tuesday evening, after we had a conversation with Keith, Danielle, and others, kind of hearing about all of the, specific community concerns. So we take it very seriously, and, we understand that, we want to sort of minimize the impact and disruption to the community. And so we're here to listen.
Great. Well, thank you very much, Jamie and team, for the update. We appreciate you letting us know what's happening. Why don't we start with BQE questions? I know there's some additional questions in the chat, and I'm sure people have some questions not directly BQE related, but let's go BQE first. I'm going to start with Jerry. You're muted.
Okay, I'm not. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Okay. First of all, I'd like to thank DOT for coming down. And as co-chair, my questions are going to be both concerning the emergency services, police, FDNY, and also traffic. First of all, Daniel in his presentation mentioned that they looked at crash data from Hamilton Avenue to Brooklyn Bridge. But the actual effect, the closure of one lane, is only from Atlantic Avenue to the Brooklyn Bridge. And I'm curious how much of that is within the numbers he's presented, because going through the trench creates its own psychological problems for some drivers. And I'm wondering if that threw off some of the crash data. That's one. Two, on slide number 8, you talked about the neighborhood protection plan. In your radio ads, which you had on for quite a while, it would have been nice, instead of saying take alternate routes, you would have mentioned some of them, because none of the cars went through the tunnel. Maybe some of the trucks did, but they did go through Carroll Gardens, Cobble Hill, Gowanus, and parts of Park Slope. Specifically in the AM, you have Clinton Street, Smith Street, Columbia Street, all backed up, and Columbia Street backed up now even in the evenings. And speaking of that, I'm going to look at public safety. I was at the firehouse on Richard Street in Red Hook on September 17th between 4 and 4:15, making arrangements for the engine company to go to a block party. And while I was there, an alarm came in for 149 Columbia Street. The ladder company left. I stayed another 5 minutes and then went up to Columbia Street to do some shopping. The ladder company was blocking Columbia Street from Kane Street. It had come up Van Brunt onto Kane and tried turning onto Columbia. Traffic was so heavy, it could not make the turn. It could not get to 149 Columbia Street. And at Atlantic Avenue, engine 226 from Brooklyn Heights was trying to get down Columbia Street. It was basically blocked from Atlantic Avenue down to Union Street. And that was additional traffic. The cars are not going in the tunnel. And I'd like to know where within CB6 in the affected area are the TEAs being placed. Nobody has seen them. I have spoken to a number of people, including the 76th precinct, and they have not seen them. So telling us that they're being moved around gets us nowhere. We need them stationary. We need them on those northbound streets. Maybe they need to stay on Atlantic Avenue to keep traffic moving. I'll leave that to the experts, but right now we have not seen them anywhere. And one last item. You talk about the traffic patterns almost returning to what they were pre-pandemic, which is 2019. Pre-pandemic, you did not have Clinton Street, Columbia Street, Smith Street backing up in the AM, and Hicks Street, pardon me. You didn't have cars diverting to the local streets in such numbers. And the same in the afternoons. Not as much, but in the afternoon, yes. And as you have it now on the weekends too. You go there on a Saturday, you go on a Sunday, you stand on the overpass on Kane Street, looking over the highway, nothing is moving in the northbound direction. The effect on the communities has been 7 days a week. And it seems that your presentation was a little rosier than I expected. Thank you.
Who wants to take that one from DOT or those questions from DOT?
I think what I heard was definitely in terms of the neighborhood congestion. Jerry, we've certainly heard about that, from a number of folks. We are going out there, and I think Dan can speak to the TEA plan. We've got, what is it, Dan, 10, 11 agents. We are.
I think 11 right now.
Yep. And so we can give you the specific locations if you tell us, since you are, out in the neighborhood all the time, if you tell us, there is a location that is in dire need of a traffic enforcement agent, please, let us know. I mean, part of the challenge is, we are pleading with the police department who, have actually tried to reassign some of the TEAs, and we are, telling them, please stick around. We're adding them to certain locations that are more complex, that require additional, person power. I think on the crash data, Jerry, I don't know if I quite understood the question. I don't know if Dan, you interpreted it a little bit more clearly than I did.
I'll repeat it again. The crash data that Dan presented, he said Hamilton Avenue to the Brooklyn Bridge. There are X number of, and I don't have the number, I didn't write the number down. There were X number of crashes in 2019. And I'm wondering if including the trench has skewed the crash data for the area of the Cantilever. In other words, I'd like to see what the data is just from Atlantic Avenue to the Brooklyn Bridge.
I see what you're asking. There were 300 in 2019 on that stretch. I don't have the breakdown right in front of me. I know the majority of that was from Atlantic Avenue to the Brooklyn Bridge.
Okay.
I don't have the specific number in front of me. That was the bulk of it though. Just because in the trench there's you don't have the on and off ramps kind of mixing in there.
And Jeannie Mae, in reference to the TEAs, maybe if the community board, the two affected community boards, not only 6, but 2, would have known and would have been consulted, we could have supported your request and still can support at a later date.
Together, I can't hear.
Can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Okay. And if you would have come to the community boards asking for us to support your request to NYPD for the assignment of permanent TEAs, not floating one, I mean permanent to the area, that might have been helpful to you. And maybe in a later date at a next meeting, we can consider that as a committee to ask that that number be increased and maybe permanently assigned, as was done during the reconstruction of the trench a great number of years ago. And I think that would all be helpful. I think we're relying too much on the goodwill of the truck drivers and motorists not to take to the local streets. We need help. Is
Yep.
basically what I'm saying.
Jerry, we will definitely take you up on that offer. What we want to do is, make sure that we're not asking for any permanent posts and then find out that, things settled and the police department comes back and says, our TEAs weren't, being fully utilized. So give us a little bit of time, but we're definitely on top of this, on a daily basis. And if you see something, let us know, and we would love to have the community boards, support our requests.
I think we will at some point. Thank you.
Thank you, Joanna.
Hi, good evening. Thank you so much for coming with all this great information. It's something a lot of us have been wondering about as we see the impacts that Jerry mentioned on the streets. It's good to know that there are some positive outcomes for drivers on the BQE. The shoulder seems great, the safer entrances you mentioned. But the fact remains that the majority of New Yorkers don't drive, and we need to deal with the impacts on our streets. So I had a couple questions, ideas related to that. One is, I don't think we should be counting on TEAs or anyone else from the NYPD to enforce the situation. They've made it perfectly clear over the last year that they are not interested in that job. They're refusing to do that job. So I'm asking the DOT to think about more proactive design fixes you guys can take at intersections. You said you've been doing some on-street monitoring, find the hot spots, find the places where the vehicles are not throughputing as you guys want them to be, and do what you can to add more LPIs to get pedestrians and people on bikes out of those intersections quickly. Daylight any corners, get rid of places where there's low visibility already to start, get rid of vehicles at those locations. You guys have your toolkit, you know what you need to do. A big one is giving people options. So, dropping down more protected bike lanes where you can. If we're asking people to not get in their cars and go this route, we need to be offering them solutions. I'm curious if you guys have reached out to the MTA to get their bus data, because just as a rider of New York City buses, I can tell you that the delays have been dramatic since August, and that's some data that I'm sure they'd be willing to share with you guys. Also interested in whether there's been any discussion with Port Authority about fair tolling or evening out the tolling, that we want people to be taking the tunnel. The tunnel costs money. People are not going to take the tunnel if the tunnel costs money and the over river crossings do not. That's really basic. Final thing, just to keep the focus also on oversized trucks as well as overweight trucks. We have so many that are over the 53-foot New York City law, and they cause huge problems on the surface streets. Jerry mentioned turning radii for the fire trucks. Same with these oversized trucks, and they just end up creating chaos. They shouldn't be in the city in the first place. And final, just a plug for getting some art on the Hicks Street wall. It's looking gorgeous. It's like clean, dry surface. Would be great to see a mural or something go in there. Thank you.
Thanks, Joanna. Jimmy, do you folks want to take any of those?
No, I think Joanna makes a lot of great points. I think it is really a combination of TEAs and traffic calming measures. So we do have our traffic ops unit and our traffic planning and management unit, both of whom deal with the signals, but also deal with design fixes. And I wish every community and community member was a fan of protected bike lanes and all of the bike ped work we do. We do collect bus data. We are monitoring that. We have had conversations and continue to have dialogue with MTA, not only with New York City Transit. We have a very good relationship there, but also with bridges and tunnels. On the Port Authority side, we've spoken to them about any traffic issues. I think all I can say about tolling is let's cross our fingers that we can get congestion pricing approved and implemented, because the goal is that's will help address some of the traffic congestion.
Thank you. And just I'll take the chair's prerogative to very quickly piggyback on one of Joanna's questions. That's about the truck monitoring. I don't remember, is Senator Kavanaugh and Assemblymember Simon's bill, is it specific to the BQE, or would that allow automated enforcement of weight and size of trucks beyond the BQE?
Initially, it's for the BQE. Obviously the goal is to expand it beyond and really just, we would love to have it everywhere.
Great, thank you. Madeline?
Yes, I just want to say, as far as the traffic has just been horrendous. I live in the south end of Red Hook, and I've had 2 doctor's appointments in this past week in the north end of Brooklyn Heights. To get from here to there is almost impossible. First, there is no public transportation from here to there. I'm too old right now to be taking my bicycle anymore. I mean, I used to be a bicyclist when nobody in this city was bicycling. But there gets to be a point in time where you just don't do that anymore. You can't. But the traffic is like impossible to try and get the heck out of Red Hook and up to the doctors. It should have been like maybe 15 minutes at the most. It was over an hour. I mean, this is ridiculous. This is absolutely ridiculous. And you're talking about trucks. We've got trucks up the wazoo at the moment, and it's only going to be getting worse. One of the Amazon things is coming online very soon. They've already got their sign up in front of the store, and in front of the building, I should say. But the traffic is just not moving. You can't get out of Red Hook. There are limited ways of leaving and getting into Red Hook, and it's just bumper to bumper. This is Monday through Sunday, the entire week. There are no days off like that anymore. And nobody seems to be doing anything about it.
I will let the folks from DOT who are more expert on this than respond, but
it's just crazy, Eric. It's just crazy.
Yeah, I was
and
just
this is we're not even, people shouldn't be coming through Red Hook in order to get to to the Brooklyn Bridge or anything like that. So I don't know where all this traffic is coming from in Red Hook.
Yeah, I was just going to point out that the number of car registrations in New York City have increased 120,000 and by 120,000 in the last year. And the last report I saw indicated that traffic is now at about 115% of what it was pre-pandemic.
It's nuts.
So it is a lot.
And yes, and they are not going into the tunnels. So I go along with Joanne. If they can do something to alleviate that toll, in some way, it might help a lot too. Maybe you would get more people going in.
I am posting the website link for the MTA's congestion pricing hearings. If anybody wants to testify, there's about another week of public hearings that you can testify online and find more information about congestion pricing.
Eric, the only thing is that by the time they get that thing done, they'll probably be done with this thing on the cantilever.
It's going to be a while. I'm not sure it's going to be quicker than or as long as it take to fix the cantilever. But anybody from DOT want to chime in on that?
I mean, Madeline, I just want to, validate your frustration. And I wish there was a quick fix solution. I mean, I think certainly, in this area, area, some of the traffic is attributable to the 2-lane. But I think also to Eric's point, there's sort of, the background traffic is just, just getting, is there and is contributing. So, I think there will likely be a tipping point where drivers get so frustrated, they're going to have to move into transit. And if, we've seen some of the data, there's still a ton of capacity on transit. So, some of these habits of people who, decided they would drive everywhere when lockdown happened, they're still not convinced to get out of their cars yet. I think there's going to be a point where people just can't take the traffic anymore.
That's terrible.
Thank you. Let's see. Peter Glusker. I think maybe Peter left, so I'll go to Maria Haber next.
Hey, thank you. Thank you for presenting. So, yeah, I'd like to echo that Columbia Street has really turned into a parking lot. It's not even just traffic; it's a parking lot. That area also went through the Gowanus project when we ripped up the streets for about 3 years. During that time, there was a proposed park on Columbia Street to help with the neighborhood. I believe the DOT has now put up a Bqe staging site there instead of a park. Could you give any detail as to what the DOT is doing with the space on Columbia Street between Keene and DeGraw?
Hello. Sorry, Jimmy, this Keith.
No, I was going to say
just
someone
briefly.
else jump in.
Yeah. That property there, so we have a few DOT facilities. There was some facilities in other locations that we needed to move there. So their operations are being done out of that lot now. They're nothing to do with Bqe construction. Actually, there are actually other DOT operations that have been moved from other areas of the city, and they've been put there on a somewhat temporary basis. As far as the future park is concerned, we've always said that we're happy to engage with the community, CB6, Councilor Melander and others about the park and talk about that future. But right now, that's temporarily relocation of facilities.
If I could, I'd like to jump in for one moment.
Yep.
That park was planned and put on the map as a park with going back to when the Bqe trench was rebuilt. I had hair on my head, and we won't go back how far that is. But originally it was going to be a roadway, a diverter, and then it was going to be made into a park. That's a good 20 years ago. Even in New York City, it doesn't take 20 years to make a small park that's 2 blocks long by 150, 200 feet. And DOT really should somehow find a better place and let the community get their park after all these years. As someone who worked on it and proposed it.
Here. So how you indicated, Mr. Bray, that if the community board was interested, that what actions should we be taking in the community?
So, and Keith, please, we would work with you to talk about what we could do with making a future park there. I think one of the issues is who would fund the park and then who would maintain it. So that wouldn't be DOT, but like I said, it's probably a fuller discussion for another time, I think.
We will, we'll invite the city to come to see our Parks Committee and make a presentation and have a discussion about that space and the future park there. So we'll send out an official invitation from the community board, and we'll certainly let the public know well in advance of that meeting. I think it's a great question, and certainly we would like to help the community get to the bottom of it.
Thank you, Eric.
Thank you. Let's see. Next, I have Christopher Crowley.
How's it going?
Good. How are you?
Good, good. So I also live on Columbia Street. I've lived here for 8 years, my wife for 10. I can say at no point during that time has the traffic that we've seen in the last month ever been the case here, even remotely. Not even remotely. So it's definitely far more than pre-pandemic levels. And in addition to the concerns about the traffic level, the noise pollution and the air pollution, I'm sitting here at almost 8 o'clock at night, and there are people outside honking their horns. That's been the case every day now for 30 days. We moved away from being on West 9th Street to avoid air pollution issues, which this neighborhood did not have, but Columbia Street most definitely does now. And the idea that we're going to wait until 2026 for this to be resolved, and that the only solution is telling people to take the tunnel, which I agree, very few will do because of the cost. There's got to be more in the bag than that. Like, what other options are out there?
Yeah, we will definitely take a closer look on Columbia Street. Even before we had this meeting tonight, that was flagged for us as a corridor that was really experiencing a lot of congestion and impacts.
Yeah, Jamie, if I could just add, I had mentioned before a few locations like signals have been adjusted already. That kind of analysis is ongoing. So we're collecting data all the time. We're looking at listening to places where people are reporting issues, looking a little more closely, and we'll keep on going with that and looking where adjustments might be possible and needed.
So what sort of adjustments would you be looking at, just hypothetically? I realize you're still studying this.
It could be, signal timing adjustments, which could mean, this is just again, hypothetical. It could mean, a particular location, like the entry point to the Bqe at the north end of Columbia, or it could mean the progression of the signals along the whole corridor, optimizing for whatever the flow of traffic might be. So maybe like more time northbound or more time southbound at different times of day. I'm not saying that's for Columbia in particular, just kind of
right. No, I get that.
So it could be things like that, or looking at, I think as Joanna and Eric were talking about, other changes at intersections that could be looking at restripings or daylighting corners or things like that might help traffic and kind of strike the balance that we're always trying to do, which makes things work best for the most people, which, taking the pedestrians and cyclists into account.
Yeah, and the cyclists are kind of another action, because they're trying to do the right thing and take their bike wherever they can go. But if there's no place for them on the road and the roads are really packed, then they end up on the sidewalk, which isn't good for any of us, especially any of us with kids.
Right.
So that would be appreciated.
Christopher, thank you. Michael?
Yes, hi. As it happens, I actually live downstairs from Christopher, and I'm glad that Dan was speaking. I think most of the points that came to mind were during his presentation or his explaining of part of this. Just to start off, I do agree that the entryways onto the two directions of the BQE and that Atlantic Avenue area are considerably better. I guess it's just a testament to government that finally happened. But I mean, it was absolute suicide to go towards Staten Island, and I'm glad that that's accomplished. But I did have a question about, did anybody, it didn't come up today, but I'm sure you're aware, but the Manhattan-bound Brooklyn Bridge lanes were also reduced from 3 to 2, which is, you know, you had 2 lanes now, a reduction to 2 lanes on the BQE leading up to the bridge, and then 2 lanes on the bridge. I mean, this was a perfect storm that created what's happening now. And when Daniel was speaking, I think it was Jerry that made the point that it did seem like a bit of a rosy kind of explanation of this. This is like the fall of Afghanistan. You guys do not understand what is going on. This is absolute night and day. We haven't crossed the intersection in our neighborhood without having to go around a car that's blocking, everybody's blocking the intersection from every direction. So changing the signal timing is not going to have any influence on what's going on. Cars are just going through red lights to make a right turn. They're jumping the curb to get around the car in front of them out of frustration. It is nonstop horns. Dan, if you want to come by and spend a few hours, I will shuttle you refreshments. You can use my apartment for your bathroom breaks. You guys aren't on the ground seeing this. This is night and day. And I have, you know, my car is parked all the time. I would like to use it for work. I used to, you know, travel through Brooklyn on occasion to do some things for work. I can't move anywhere. I hear people talking about 8th Avenue. I mean, it is, you know, it's all through Prospect Heights, everything. We're talking about congestion pricing for Lower Manhattan. I go to Manhattan for a break. Brooklyn is wall to wall, honking horns, people screaming, people endangering everyone. And in Manhattan, it seems like an oasis of peace compared to Brooklyn right now. So I just don't think that this assessment, what we're talking about, and you know, I'm sure some people's blood was boiling, and I'm trying to, you know, be constructive and not just throw things out there, but we're not talking about the same reality. If these assessments are that, well, we could change some signal timing. I mean, this is just Sundays, the day of rest, are an absolute nightmare in Columbia Street. Please come down to Columbia Street. You will just hear nonstop honking, nonstop cursing out the windows. My children used to, like, you know, they sleep in the front. They have to hear these horns starting at 6 a.m. People with absolute rage going, you know, waiting to get through an intersection, 3 or 4 lights changing. So come on, what reality are we talking about? I mean, these are not solutions. 2 lanes going into Manhattan, 2 lanes on the BQE, and you just lit a bomb. Like this whole place is just unrecognizable. It's unrecognizable. Thank you very much.
Michael, thanks. And I would.
Can I ask just what kind of generally time of day you guys are seeing the most issues on Columbia Street?
You can come down right now and you can see it, but for absolute certain, Sundays and the weekends are not a break at all. People are moving around and they need to get to places. And I don't even know why, if I was on the BQE, I would find myself on Columbia, or I would find myself on Hicks or Smith Street, and all the way up to 8th Avenue, apparently. I don't know why I would find myself on those streets. I honestly don't. I've been in bad traffic all over the city. I grew up here. I don't know why I would find myself on these side streets, but yet here they are. So obviously during the rush hour when we're all taking our kids to school and everything, but like I said, at 6 a.m., you will have cars all in a row with no distance between them, waiting for the light to change 2, maybe 3 times to go 1 city block. And this is just, and there's buses in there, and there's garbage trucks and recycling trucks in there, and school buses and everything else. So this is not sustainable. no one is going, and I'm very hopeful that people will just turn to mass transit. But I really don't think that's a sort of plan that is a real shot of alleviating this. So I wish I could tell you, Dan, but it's more often than not. And the honking doesn't stop. We can't leave the windows open, even after dinner hours. Maybe it subsides around 10 o'clock at night.
Thanks,
Thank
Michael.
you.
Yeah, I
Connor?
mean, I can tell you that 100% everything that Mike just said. And in terms of time, I actually have been trying to record it. And he's right, it started about starting at 6 a.m. There's a brief lull around 1, and then it picks up again at 3, and it carries on until 9:30, 10 o'clock at night. So pretty much any time that most people are awake.
Thanks, guys. Anu? I hope
Hi, hi, thank you. I am a resident of Columbia Waterfront. I live on Carroll Street, and I want to reiterate what many are saying, that there's been a exponentially increased traffic in the area since the lane change on the BQE. I do have a question about, some of my questions were answered in the time I've been waiting, but do you study GPS apps and routing? Not that I think it's faster to come through Columbia, but is that the source of some of the diversion of traffic?
I think, yeah, we do look at that, and we speak to them. They're, you could check, I mean, people could check on their own. There are times where, Google or Waze might be sending people down through the local streets. I'll check periodically. They usually, the BQE itself is still the faster route, so that's usually what they'll be directing people towards.
Yeah, and Dan, I
It is
just want to,
yeah.
I just want to step in because we did have a call with
Yeah.
Waze and I guess Google, they're the same thing, last week, and said, listen, we're seeing and hearing about all the local traffic impacts. They confirmed, their algorithms are putting people on, the highways, keeping them there. The second best, is the tunnel. They obviously give you the options to use the local streets. We could, the only way, I mean, their suggestion is the only way we could really limit people using, or really prohibit people using local streets is if we ban certain left turns, and then the algorithm would just not be able to send them on local streets. So I mean, we can look into that. That might be more disruptive than just people kind of getting the hint that maybe these local streets aren't necessarily faster.
Right. I have to say, since the lane change, and I've been driving on other streets, and it's not just Columbia, so I want to confirm and reiterate some that people have been saying. It's kind of all the way up to Park Slope. So whatever's happening, it's happening everywhere. And Columbia Street, just in particular, because of its proximity to the Hamilton Expressway and BQE, maybe is catching a bit of the brunt of it, but just want to confirm all that. And then as far as congestion pricing, is there, I know we've talked about that already, but is that really a viable way to minimize, and it is long-term, so the short-term solutions are really the thing that we need, and I know you've already addressed that. So
I think there are a lot of factors, and I can't predict the future because I don't think I could have predicted COVID. If in 2+ years congestion pricing is implemented, hopefully, we'll be past this pandemic, or some place on the other side, and between tolling and drivers reluctant to pay to get into the CBD, and that money being assigned to improve transit, we can sort of rebalance the way people move. So I think that's the goal. And we know it's worked in other, in other cities where London and Singapore, where there you go. Thank you. Where it's been implemented for many years.
Okay. And I want to thank you for your work on this. I appreciate it. I really do.
Thanks, Anu. Michelle?
Hi, thanks for listening to my comments. My big concern right now is Red Hook. We have a massive influx of new last mile warehouses coming up. I think there's slated 6 currently, and then there's a massive one undeveloped, soon to be developed on the waterfront. How is the DOT engaging with new traffic in Red Hook? It's alarming to imagine the amount of traffic that's going to happen, and it's a really small little pocket of Brooklyn that has very limited roadways in and out. I know that Hank Gutman took a tour with, I think it was Carlos Menencia, and he suggested some speed bumps. And I just really was kind of offended by his suggestion because it's so much bigger than speed bumps. And I want the DOT to get involved, and I'm just curious to know if they're stepping up at all. That's my question.
So this is Keith again. I was on that walkthrough with Commissioner Gutman, and at the time we said we looked at some of the issues and feedback we've heard. We subsequently, DOT joined a joint CB6 and CB7 community board meeting to discuss this very issue about last mile distribution centers. And one of the things we said at that meeting is that since all of them are being built as of right, there's nothing we can do there's nothing actually the city of New York can do to really regulate them. They follow all the zoning laws and zoning codes. So what our role at DOT is right now is when those facilities get built, we work with them on curb cut reviews. And the only reason we even have that review is because the Department of Buildings wants our opinion of how trucks coming in and out of the facility and what parking or other regulation changes that may be needed for that. So we do some studies on these curb cuts. And that's sort of the limit right now. And one of the things we were saying at the end of that meeting is that not only should that joint community board process continue, but that the elected officials and the reps that were there, also I think the Port Authority of New York was there, EDC was there, Department of Buildings was there, DCP, we should all get together and talk about solutions and things that work with Red Hook. And we should continue that. So I will say that that's something we will follow up with some of those parties and try to get something together.
It's a serious issue, and it needs more attention than just curb cuts. So I hope you and also Denise Mendez get involved and help these companies come up with some other solutions. Waterways is a big opportunity. We're not being very innovative in New York City and giving these businesses optional transport methods. They need to use ferries. They need to use the waterways, get off the Bqe, get off the streets. And I feel like New York City has been so uninnovative, and we need to be really forward thinking and think way above curb cuts.
Michelle, you have said everything that I have been charged, I and my colleagues, including Denise, have been charged to do. The next couple of months is to, with my colleagues at EDC, develop this freight vision, which is all about moving goods by water and rail. And a lot of these initiatives come out of our smart truck management plan, but EDC, they're dealing with interested businesses who are actually taking steps to move goods by water. So this is all great. It's not enough, obviously, right now. So we want to do more. In fact, you know, the AIA, the American Institute of Architects in New York, has a transportation and infrastructure group, and they're you know, trying to convene a multi-agency task force, which I'm sort of helping to organize, including city planning, to really get a handle on and rationalize, you know, policies around, you know, freight movement and last mile distribution facilities. So, you know, unfortunately, there's not a magic bullet, you know, in the short term. But all of, you know, I think there's a lot of focus on this, and people understand how serious this is, especially given, you know, these, you know, increasing trends to deliver everything, you know, in real time.
Thank you for that. And I'm really pleased to hear that you're an advocate for innovative transport. I just wish that it was a little bit more proactive and a little bit more evident where we're going. And I hope we get there.
I think we will. I think, I mean, one way to put it is, you know, it took us a while to, you know, figure out that moving pedestrians and cyclists was just as important as moving cars. And now we have to figure out how to move our goods in a safe and sustainable way.
Thank you.
Let's see, Karen next.
Yes, hi. Can you hear me okay?
Yep.
Okay. I have my headphones on because of the noise outside and because of the traffic. I am alone in my quiet house, except that it's not quiet. So first I want to thank everybody who's been so thoughtful, both folks from the DOT and from CB6 and from communities. I really hear, you know, the message about how dynamic these challenges are, and you know, we all live in our communities and we want our communities to be better, but it is really a huge borough-wide challenge, and I really hear that. So two things. First, I want to echo that a lot of what people have been talking about is happening here in Park Slope along 7th and 8th Avenues as well. You know, it has been an exponential increase from pre-pandemic levels, absolutely. The timing is maybe it sounds a little bit better than what Columbia Street's dealing with. We usually get a reprieve weekdays between 11 and 1:30 or 2, and then it starts up again, and it just seems to have stopped outside my window while in the last 10 minutes. And that's from like 2:30 or 1:30, 2:30 this afternoon. And again, Friday, all day, nonstop. And so we have it here too. And it's a mental health challenge. It's becoming a mental health challenge for many of us. You know, with so many people working from home, there are just days where, you know, we just feel like we're losing our minds, and there's just, you know, so I think that's another input that I think is important for folks, that aside from an overall health challenge, it's also when you can't find peace in your own home, that becomes a mental health risk factor. So the question that I have, because I really hear that there's a lot of effort being made, and I do want to add my complaint, but I don't want to just complain. So I guess my question, I think Keith, I believe we've met a couple of years ago. I believe you were part of a walkthrough with then Commissioner, was it Trottenberg or Tottenberg? I'm not sure I'm getting her name right. On the 8th Avenue and Union crossing. And we have heard some news that they are possibly considering a right turn lane. And I wanted to know how I can follow up about what actions and changes might be on the table in my community so that I can stay engaged and involved as an advocate for change. So I'm wondering, Keith, is that you who I should stay in touch with? What's the best approach for somebody who wants to be an advocate for their community, even in the context of these much larger dynamic system issues?
Yeah, you should definitely be in contact with my office. We been having some preliminary discussions, but nothing further with the community board and some of the local electeds about that location and the larger sort of area around there, including Grand Island Plaza. And so, yes, be in touch with our office because we're taking a broader look at that. little
Okay.
slice of
And so
North
Keith,
Coast.
is that like is there an email you can give me? What would be the best
Yes,
way?
I can add it to the chat. So.
Great, thank you very much.
Aaron, thank you. Steve Marcus?
Hi, good evening. First of all, Eric and Jerry, thank you for hosting this meeting. And I want to thank all the DOT people, all the staff attending this meeting. I and my neighbors on Nelson Street, I've noticed a huge increase in truck traffic coming down our street and creating quite a dangerous situation and property damage along the way. There are signs posted saying no turns, no truck turns unless local deliveries, posted on Smith and Nelson and also Court and Nelson, but yet they're continuing to go right through and down our street. And there's two things. I'm wondering, how do we get enforcement of the no truck? You know, we spent years getting our assembly member, Joanne Simon, and before that, the previous assembly member to post those signs when I'm grateful that they did, but now there's absolutely no enforcement of that, creating a dangerous situation. That's my first question. Second is the DOT aware of any changes in the traffic pattern on Nelson Street between Smith and Clinton? One of my neighbors mentioned there was someone in DOT mentioned that there may be a change in the traffic pattern or the lanes, eliminating a whole side of the street from parking. And then the last question I have is there a way we can get Waze and Google to ban a left on Nelson Street from Smith for trucks and a right on Nelson Street from Court for trucks? So there's three questions.
Thanks, Steve. So I'm sorry that those signs aren't working, and the trucks are going wherever they want. We share your frustration. I mean, I wish I had a good answer. We are working closely with our partners at the NYPD to really step up enforcement of traffic violations across all issues, right? I don't know if you saw the New York Times article today, but enforcement, there's just been a lot more reckless behavior. People are ignoring rules. Trucks, are ignoring designated truck routes. I think, again, we're taking notes, identifying the problem areas, and we'll do our best. Unfortunately, it's sort of a citywide issue, and I can't tell you that we'll have cops out there tomorrow. So again, we're taking notes. I can't speak to the question about Nelson between Smith and Clinton. I don't know if any of my colleagues are aware of that location or that situation. And if not, we can follow up after tonight's meeting.
That would be great. I would appreciate
Okay.
that because obviously it's a very narrow street. 100% residential on both streets. And we like to see it continue that way. But if there's any changes, I would like to be aware of it.
Okay.
If I can jump in for one moment to answer Steve's question, or give him an avenue to get maybe some answers. Steve, one of the things you might want to do is next Wednesday, October 6th, October 6th, the 76th Precinct Community Council will be holding its monthly Zoom meeting and in attendance is the captain and the NCO officers and others from the precinct. And I think that would be a place for you to bring your complaint. And we
Actually,
can
Jerry, I
maybe-
don't mind walking over there and talking to them.
You'd
be so kind to give me names.
if you're gonna walk over to the meeting, it's Zoom, unfortunately.
No, I'm talking about I'll walk over to the precinct.
Why don't you and I do that offline?
You got it, Jerry. Thank you. And the last is if there's a way to talk to Google and Waze to have them ban truck traffic from making that turn off Smith onto Nelson and off Court Street onto Nelson.
So we would have to ban the left. Waze doesn't.
It's already banned, but they're
Oh, it
not adhering
is.
to it.
Oh,
Yeah, there are signs posted,
okay.
but
And Waze will tell
You mean
you.
just for trucks, correct?
yeah,
Just
it's
for trucks?
just for trucks.
Yes.
But that sign is not actually
Hmm.
within Google or Waze, so trucks take that right because they're following the directions of those apps.
Right.
There's a
So
way we could speak to the app makers and say, no right on Court, no left on off Smith.
So one of the things, and I'm sure the team will want to take a look at that, is that if you are actually a truck driver, you're not supposed to be using Google and Waze, as those are not commercial
Correct.
GPS systems. So
But they are.
Understood, but it's also on the user of that system to understand what it is that they are using, as inappropriate as it may be. So I'm sure the team will reach out and see what options there are, but it's not
Thank
the
you very
appropriate
much.
tool. Yep.
I think, Steve, we do have a direct line of communication with the Trucking Association of New York, and they have asked us, what they can do to message to their drivers to, do the right thing. So this is a good one. We'll put it on our list. They have, there's a bit of self-enforcement, and it's tough, but if at least we have their lobbyists we can talk to.
To give you some insight, we were having truck traffic coming up off of Public Place from the former Citizen site cleanup just above the canal. And, National Grid was really accommodating and told their drivers not to come up Nelson Street, not to come up Court Street. They were a designated route where they were to go, leaving the site from during their remediation work. And they've been great. We've seen actually an uptick of traffic now, and I'm not sure it's from the Citizen site, Public Place, or somewhere else. I know while I'm working, I'm looking out and seeing trucks going by. I'm not out there taking names and license plates, but we're seeing on any given hour 5 to 10 trucks during the day coming down the street. Thank you for your help, and I'll let someone else speak.
Thanks, Steve. Linnea?
Sorry, rookie mistake. Thank you all very much for being here. So I'm actually a new transplant to New York City, so I feel a little reluctant, especially as a Kansan, to bring up my traffic issues. I know we're not in Kansas anymore. However, I have lived extensively in the Middle East and North Africa, and the traffic in Park Slope is more reminiscent of what I saw in Istanbul or Kuwait or Morocco, and not what I was expecting when I heard New York City traffic is bad. My concern is with so many vehicles just blocking the box in a staggered pattern, causing folks who are trying to cross when they have the light to have to weave through the cars. You're going to have someone seriously hurt or possibly killed. I've seen children doing it during when they're walking home from school with their little backpacks, and they're just having to snake through these cars, and the cars don't always see them, and the cars behind them sure don't either. So I guess my question is, and again, as a transplant, I don't know if this is allowed in New York, are block the box cameras not an option to free up these intersections? If we could put block the box cameras, and just, if we're having traffic enforcement issues, if tickets aren't being written, if folks aren't suffering the penalties, is there a way to automate this and take it out of enforcement's hand so that then we can actually move the needle on getting the change we want on our streets? And I'm happy to contact and call every day, call whoever I need to, who can put these on the street lights if we can. I just need to know who to contact if this is an option, because I'd love to see it happen. It shouldn't be happening like this.
Linnea, first of all, can you send us the locations where you are seeing these problems?
8th Avenue. I live off of 3rd Street. I see it every day on 3rd. I see it especially going up towards Grand Army Plaza, running parallel to Prospect. Sorry, I'm still learning on my roads. Running up towards Grand Army Plaza. But I've seen like every day, it's just a hot mess. And I know anyone who comes up, for instance, if I ever drive, Waze tells me to come up 3rd Street and go northbound. Northbound, maybe not northbound, but Waze tells me to take 3rd Street rather than go up 8th Avenue because it doesn't even want me to try 8th because it's just a parking lot. And it is, but I just see these all down 8th, you just see people consistently blocking the box. And I would say it starts at 3 p.m. and it gets worse until about 4 p.m., 5 p.m., 6 p.m. It's just a parking lot and there's no enforcement whatsoever. I've not seen a single ticket out there. I've not seen a single person, getting any kind of penalty for this.
Yeah, I think we'll look into it. I don't know the details of block the box cameras. I know for our other sort of speed cameras, we require approval from Albany. It sounds strange. We can't even get our cameras in school zones working 24/7. That is something we want from a safety perspective, but we'll get back to you. If the specific locations, if you're driving or walking one day and you've got a picture or you can write them down, that'd be really helpful.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Lene. Tobias?
Hello. Thank you. And actually, my first question is actually I just want to be just really specific about where we ought to send data or pictures about dangerous intersections. Do we send them to you? Or where in the DOT are these meant to go? Because I've got plenty.
I think, and I don't want to speak on behalf of Keith because I'm sure his email box. So if they're specific to the BQE, and sometimes it's hard to tell, is this traffic because of the 2-lane or is this just, crazy traffic? We've got the BQE project email up on the screen. If I think Keith, you had put your email address in the chat earlier. I think if it's sort of Keith is our Brooklyn Borough Commissioner, so his office deals with, any and all issues affecting the borough. You can send it to him. Either case, it will get to us, the rest of us here, and we can address the issues.
Okay. Just to say who we are, we've been living here in Cobble Hill for 16 years on Warren Street near Clinton. And I know other people have said this, but it really bears repeating that the traffic in this area is well beyond anything that happened before the BQE, anything that happened before the pandemic. It's way past any of it. I don't know how you're viewing this traffic, if you're just seeing dots on a map moving around, but it is really getting dangerous out here. It's not just unpleasant and rattling for the people who make their lives here. It's actually dangerous. And the effect of this project goes well beyond the little strip of land that you're talking about in your report. It is all over this neighborhood and north of us, south of us, and everywhere else. I just wanted to follow on what the last speaker was saying about just how difficult it is to simply cross a street now. We walk our son to school every morning in Barham Hill, and crossing Court Street, crossing Smith Street, crossing pretty much every north-south street through Barham Hill. We were probably weaving in and out of traffic to do that. At the corner of Dean and Nevins, there's actually a missing crosswalk signal that was removed to make room for scaffolding, and it's never been put back. So it's actually extra dangerous right there on the corner of that school. So please tell me who to talk to get this crosswalk signal put back, because this is just one more thing that's making all of this so much more dangerous. We live just here next to Clinton Street, and even before any of these things happened, whether it's the BQE or COVID, we would see every morning drivers grinding their way up Clinton Street to get to Atlantic Avenue. And by the time they reached our part of the neighborhood, they were so frustrated that they're not looking at signals. They're certainly not going to be looking at new traffic signs. And this is only getting worse. And I really fear that someone is going to get hurt or killed because of the conditions that are being created here. I know you get data about, I'm not sure how it could be that the data that you're talking about in safety are about vehicles hitting other vehicles. And I don't know why it was on us to bring up vehicles hitting pedestrians, vehicles hitting bicyclists. Mm-hmm. This is actually part of your job. And even if, in any case, I don't know how you would hear about any of the near misses that happen, and how many times I or my wife or our son have nearly been hit by someone. You don't hear about that, mm-hmm. just as you don't hear about the degrading quality of life. So whoever is giving you data, it's insufficient. And you're asking about what intersections should we go look at, and really you could pick kind of any of them. I mean, certainly look at Core Street, look at Atlantic Avenue, look at Smith Street, but really if you picked any intersection within a half mile of the BQE, you'll get more data than you have now, really. Thank you.
Thanks, Tobias. Maddie, are you still here? I think Maddie left. She posted a link to her petition in the chat, which is a petition asking the city to make some design changes to Grand Army Plaza. If anybody would like to sign that, it's in the chat, and I'll repost it in a moment. So it's near at the bottom of the chat. Next up is Marlene. And then I have Jerry and Joanne, and then I'd like to wrap it up at that point because we're closing in on 8:30. Marlene, are you still here? Looks like
I'm here.
Okay, there you are. Go ahead.
I did post some information in the chat, but I just wanted to reiterate, and I think the previous speaker sort of touched on this. I've lived at Henry between 3rd and 4th place for over 30 years. And I would say over the past decade, we've been complaining about the traffic at the corner of Henry and Hamilton. And as I put in the notes, it's very interesting. When I filed a complaint with the city about 2 years ago, it turns out the 311 system has no data point for Henry and Hamilton. So therefore, when I filed a complaint about the traffic at, how it backs up onto Henry Street because the intersection is blocked, they actually ended up just closing the report because they couldn't figure out where Henry and Hamilton was. So this has been an ongoing issue in the community because of what's going on at Hamilton. So this has just made it worse. So just like everyone else now, we've always had the traffic backing all the way up in Henry. Now it's just worse. So what happens is when the police comes down the street, as I think Joanne mentioned, they don't want to be bothered with dealing with this traffic. So they just turn their lights on, get everybody to move, and they just go down, and then everyone is just sitting there blowing their horns anyway. And this is an ongoing issue because I even brought this up a long time ago as well at one of the police meetings. So that is something we need addressed. Because what also inevitably happens, and this has been going on as well, is that you have 3 lanes on Hamilton, and the drivers who are on the outer part of Hamilton at Henry, they will attempt to run the red light. So for those of us coming out of Henry, if you don't pay attention, you can get hit by someone running the red light because they're trying to get into that Bqe exit ramp, on-ramp. That's at the bottom there by the school. So that's between Henry and Hicks. So that still is an issue that hasn't been addressed. And I don't know if it's something like a don't block the box kind of thing, but that's something we would really, really love to get addressed that has never been addressed. And I have seen the changes over 30 years while living on this block. So that's even something as simple as the maps, right? Updating the maps so the 311 system doesn't think we don't exist. That would be nice. The other thing I wanted to point out as well, and I said in the chat, is that I think we haven't talked about COVID. And I know when I've spoken to folks, they actually have turned to cars because they don't want to take public transportation, right? They are concerned about transmission. And that's something I think that will always impact some of what we're seeing in terms of travel. And then lastly, as someone pointed out, I do a lot of work in Red Hook. And so definitely what impact the last mile warehouses and the trucks that are coming are going to have on that community and on the traffic is totally significant. So it's important for us to actually address that as well. But if we can get any relief here on Henry Street, that would be great. And particularly because I've often wondered why we don't have signs that say something like, it might be useless, but you know, don't blow your horn, you'll be fine. Because there's actually a school right here. So in the morning, you now have the noise from the Bqe, and then the usual traffic we have on Henry, and all of these drivers are blowing their horns. And this is happening every single day. But as I said, this is not new. This has been going on for a long time. This has just made it worse. So hopefully we can come to a solution about what can happen at that intersection. And oh, lastly, I think what has also made it worse was well-intentioned. At the corner of Henry and Hamilton, the Parks Department put in, there was a curb cut, and they put in one of the green streets right there. So whereas when you got to that corner, you could have, if you were trying to just continue, go on to Hamilton and continue and not go into the tunnel, you could have gone around the driver who was trying to go into the Bqe area. Now you have to sit behind that person. So if he cannot move to get onto that lane, to get into the Bqe, you're stuck even though you're trying to go further away from the entrance to the Bqe. So that has just made everything even more worse. Okay. Thank you.
Thanks, Marlene. And I would suggest following up with Keith Bray and his team at the Brooklyn Commissioner's Office. And again, his email was posted in the chat earlier. Always feel free to copy the community board on any correspondence, and we'll try to be helpful. But appreciate your suggestions. I've got Jerry and then Joanne Valenti for the last two questions or comments.
I really don't have a question. I have more of a comment. Jeannie Mae, you in your, I guess, the last slide where you talked about next steps and the contracts, you have a bullet point that says launch quarterly meetings. And I know this is in reference to the future, but based on what you've heard tonight, it seems to me that maybe DOT should work with the community board for the next few months more closely and have meetings with the community to go over these problems and see how they can be resolved. We just spent 2 hours hearing a lot from people in the community on the effects of the lane closures. From an engineering point of view, they make sense. But from a community point of view, living and growing, and for their kids growing up in the neighborhood, and as the lady in Park Slope said, just her basic sanity, it might make more sense, and not just quarterly, but maybe every 3 months, maybe that works out to quarterly. Every 3 months, we get together and just go over what's been done, what's been changed, and how it's been improved or not, or what else has come up. It seems to me that we waited too long for this meeting, but now we have the opportunity to work together and try and alleviate and make things better for the community. I'm not interested in making things better right now for the motorists, but I think that to make things better for the community, both on all of the northbound streets you heard about, and some of the southbound streets in the afternoon. So I'd like if you and the borough commissioner can think about that, and working with Eric and myself and the district office, we can come up with some sort of plan to get together. Maybe it's a task force, maybe it's off the line and not a regular transportation meeting. I don't know, but see what you come up with and see how we can better work with the community. They hear from us, they hear from you, and we hear from them. Thank you.
Sure, Jerry. Keith and I will put our heads together.
Thanks, guys. Joanne, we'll take the last question from you if you're still there.
Yes, I'm here. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Terrific. Okay, so I wanted to echo a lot of what people said about the streets, especially northbound. I live in Park Slope for many years, and one of my big questions is what kind of coordination there might have been or not between this BQE project and the other projects that have been ongoing for years in Park Slope. 6th Avenue has been one way for way more than 3 years, as far as I remember. And I think that if that were something, I leave early in the morning and sometimes I see work there, but more often I don't. I can't vouch for whether it's going on later in the day, but I wonder if there's an update on what's going on there, because certainly having another northbound street would be helpful. Do you have any information on that?
So this is Keith. Certainly, and actually this was mentioned several times in the chat tonight as well. There's a massive DEP project that's going on in that north area of the Park Slope. And one of the things I do believe is having an impact on 8th Avenue traffic is that between Berkeley Place and St. John's Place is actually closed off during the daytime. Right, because the main is too big. They can't have regular traffic on it. It's only for emergency vehicles only. So it's actually closed off. I think it's 7:30 to 3:30. And they're doing a lot of other water main work out that area. So I will say we've been talking to DDC about that project. And we're also, the councilman's office is a bit concerned about it as well, Councilman Lander. So we are looking to see if there's things to improve sort of that immediate area based on disruptions that happen. We should have something short.
Are you referring to 6th Avenue as well, or just the project on 8th Avenue?
Also, yes, 6th Avenue.
6th Avenue has been going on for well over 3 years.
It's all the same project, Joanne.
Is
Same
it?
project.
Okay.
It's all connected to the new water tunnel number 3 and
Okay.
new water mains.
And there's also paving going on, which I'm wondering about at this time, if there's any way that can be at least be put on hold for the time being, because that closes off streets as well. Today I had to snake through, I went about 6 different ways just to because I wound up on Flatbush Avenue, and you can't make left turns from there. I had to go up, and then there were other streets closed up there too. So it's become kind of like a maze. And I'm just wondering if there's a way to, this may make a small difference, but every little bit helps, because I've been stuck for over an hour many times as well. And some of us need to drive, you know? I don't know. I also wanted to ask about one other, it's somewhat unrelated, but going on to the Gowanus from 3rd Avenue and by the Prospect, in the morning, I'm talking about 7 in the morning, because of the people who are going onto the BQ, I'm going the other way towards Staten Island, and I can't get through that intersection because that's very well blocked off. The signaling there seems way off. Can anybody look into that? And do you know what I mean?
Can you repeat the location again, Joanne?
Oh, Joanne, we did.
There you go, Dan.
The Prospect Avenue entries. It's a place that we've been looking at and know there are some issues.
Right, going on to the Gowanus from 3rd Avenue, and there's a very, very, very long turn from those coming the other way, going onto the BQE, I assume, and sometimes that box is so blocked that nobody can move from there, and you have people in the left lane cutting around, even though there's only supposed to be one lane going into that ramp going up towards Staten Island. It's one big mess of everybody trying to compete because it's insane, you know? So you're saying you're looking into that whole intersection?
We are, yeah, we were aware of the issues there, and we're looking into it. It's you know, several streets, and it's kind of complex. So
yeah,
but it's a location we know that there's a concern.
Okay, well, I just hope that we can come up with some solution, because I'm losing my mind too. and as I want to also echo the situation with the safety. I've seen many near misses and it just doesn't feel safe, so thank you.
Thanks, Joanne. Thanks, everybody. We got to all the questions, or at least the questions that were raised. I'm sure there are many more. I'd like to thank Jimmy and Keith and the whole team from DOT for joining us this evening and sticking around to address a lot of issues that go well beyond the BQE triple cantilever. So we appreciate the opportunity to discuss these issues with you. Welcome you back anytime at Jerry's suggestion to talk more about these issues. I'd like to thank everybody who came from the public to raise issues and express their frustrations, which we all share, and hopefully we will see change for the better before long. Thanks to the committee members for being here, and a special thanks to Evan for running the technical side of this. I could not juggle all those balls at the same time myself. So again, please feel free to follow up directly with DOT. Always feel free to copy the community board on any correspondence or to reach out directly to the community board when you have issues on traffic or anything else in the community. Thanks, everyone. Have a good evening and enjoy the weekend. And we'll see you again next month, I hope.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Good night.
Thanks, Eric.